You are a ship sailing alone on an endless ocean, and suddenly, another ship appears nearby and is heading in your direction. Don't be too quick to be happy, because the strange direction of the ship makes people wonder what happened to her. Strange is not enough to describe this strange ship. When she gets closer, you find that there is no one on it. Although the sails and masts were damaged, the empty ship kept moving forward, as if a ghost was steering her. Yes, this ship is the famous ghost ship, Mary Celeste. Tonight, let us tell the story of the most famous ghost ship in history. Before the Mary Celeste became a ghost ship adrift in the Atlantic, she was once a shipbuilder's beloved treasure, a beautiful and well-functioning merchant brigantine. She was built in Nova Scotia, Canada in 1860 and successfully launched in 1861, but her name was Amazon at that time. The Amazon sailed smoothly for several years, always riding the wind and waves, and safely carrying the crew and cargo to the other shore. Until a storm in 1867, the Amazon was defeated by the storm and was forced to run aground on the coast of Cape Breton Island. Superior. The Amazon was thus abandoned, for she was so badly damaged that she was a wreck. However, the Amazon's miserable state of abandonment did not last long, as she was soon bought that same year and then passed on to a man named Richard. Not only did Richard repair her and become her new captain, he also did something more important to her: he changed her name to Mary Celeste. From then on, this name will follow her forever and enter the history of the world. 1 page. Unfortunately, the new captain Richard was deeply in debt and had to hand over Mary Celeste to his creditors in 1869 and sell it to James Company. Over the next 3 years, Mary Celeste's shares continued to change hands among various companies, and few sailings were made, or if any sailings were made, they were not recorded. After several setbacks, Mary Celeste finally found a new owner. His name was Benjamin, an American who bought 1/3 of Mary Celeste's shares. He becomes the new captain of the Mary Celeste, and his fate will forever be entangled with this troubled merchant ship. Benjamin was born in a family of captains. His father was a captain. His brothers were also engaged in sailing, and Benjamin himself was doing quite well. In early 1872, the Mary Celeste was remodeled to increase length and depth, and a second deck was added, almost doubling her original size. The renovated Mary Celeste is preparing for her first voyage. This is also Benjamin and Mary Celeste's first journey together. They are setting off from New York to Genoa, Italy. Briggs is looking forward to the trip as he brought his wife Sarah and daughter Sophia with him on board. Sophia is not yet 2 years old, so this transoceanic sailing journey must be very difficult for her, but Briggs was unfazed and told his wife they would be in good hands, as he had enlisted his longtime partner Richardson to serve as first mate. But Briggs was less familiar with the other crew members. The second mate and the purser were both New Yorkers, recommended by Winchester. The 4 sailors were all of German descent. Although Briggs was optimistic about the voyage, there was a problem hidden behind the optimism. According to records, the Mary Celeste had only 1 lifeboat when it set sail. It is said that the reason was that the ship owner Winchester wanted to order a larger lifeboat, so he removed the old one. However, no matter what his original plan was, when the ship went to sea, the lifeboats were still the old boats, and only one was put in. On November 7, 1872, the Mary Celeste made its first voyage. In addition to the above-mentioned members, the ship also carried 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol. The originally bad weather finally improved, and when Mary Celeste and the 10 crew members set sail, the weather was perfect. Briggs wrote a letter to his mother 4 days before setting sail. "Our ship is beautiful and I hope our trip goes well. But Will his wish come true? The Mary Celeste has already sailed, and now we turn the camera to another Canadian merchant ship named God's Grace, which is waiting to sail in New Jersey. Captain David led the crew and set out for Gibraltar on the other side of the Atlantic on November 15, 1872, 8 days later than Mary Celeste. Why are we suddenly telling the story of another ship? Because in about 20 days, the God's Grace will encounter Mary Celeste. On December 4, 1872, between the Azores and the coast of Portugal, the crew of the God's Grace noticed something unusual on the sea. A merchant ship was lurching in their direction. Ground close. Although there was no collision, the other party's strange movements made the crew of the God's Grace very worried, thinking that there might be something wrong with the ship. As the two ships approached, they found the strange ship's decks empty. The signal sent by the God's Grace received no response. They could only learn from the name on the stern that this strange ship was called Mary Celeste. So the crew of the God's Grace decided to board the Mary Celeste to find out what happened. The Mary Celeste was in very bad condition. The sails were only half open and some parts were even missing. Parts of the rigging were broken and ropes hung loosely to the side. Nearly all the hatches and access points to the deck were open, which was highly unusual as all it took was rain and a few high waves to fill the boat with water. There are various signs that Mary Celeste is no longer driven and maintained autonomously. But does the so-called no one mean that there is no one on the ship, or is the human body still there, but without life? The crew of the God's Grace continues to explore the Mary Celeste, hoping to find some clue as to what happened. In the captain's cabin, they saw a messy bed and children's toys, proving that children had lived here. In addition, in the first mate's cabin, they found a logbook. The last day in the logbook was November 24th of that year. There was no mention of anything unusual in it, just like they had another peaceful day. However, they found no one, not even a body. The Mary Celeste is a complete ghost ship, sailing on the vast ocean without anyone but still moving forward, as if a supernatural force is guiding it. A month ago, the Mary Celeste was still a large merchant ship that had been carefully refitted. It was in good condition and sailed by an experienced captain and crew. Now, it was in a dilapidated state, drifting alone in the Atlantic Ocean. No one knew the whereabouts of the crew on the ship, nor did they know what happened to Mary Celeste. What's up? The God's Grace sent some crew members over and slowly led Mary Celeste to Gibraltar, where she underwent a hearing. Gibraltar's legal officer Vlad firmly believed that Mary Celeste must have fallen into the state because of an unexpected crime. He first questioned the lies of Captain Morehouse and others on the God's Grace, because he believed that Mary Celeste could not drift that far without anyone, and she must have been robbed by the God's Grace. In addition, he also suspected that Mary Celeste was as far away as New York. The ship owner Winchester may have sent the crew to kill Captain Briggs and his family for bail fraud or other conspiracy, and then abandoned the ship and fled, which led to the ghost ship incident. Flood proposed these theories, but none of them could be proven. Neither Morehouse nor Winchester were ultimately convicted, and Mary Celeste's fate became an eternal mystery. What happened to that ship? Because the media at the time covered the case extensively, Flood's theory also attracted public attention. In addition, Captain Morehouse of the God's Grace allowed the crew to sail the Mary Celeste, which set off a whirlwind of conspiracy theories in public opinion. Many people believe that the Mary Celeste incident was indeed the result of a crime. If the murderer was not an impromptu robbery of the grace of God, it was an evil arrangement by Winchester who wanted to defraud the insurance money. However, there is no evidence for either statement, and there is no evidence such as blood stains on the ship to prove that Captain Briggs and others were murdered. Another more credible theory is that the Mary Celeste encountered an unstoppable natural disaster, such as a severe storm or even a waterspout, which caused the ship to be unable to operate normally and the crew had nowhere to escape and had to abandon the ship in a lifeboat. Whether it was the Briggs family, First Officer Richardson, the German crew, and others, the passengers on the Mary Celeste never saw them again. If they really abandoned the ship and fled, I'm afraid their fate would be to be buried in the sea. There is no one on the boat, but the fire in the stove is still burning, and the dishes on the table are arranged and have cooled down. You may have seen related descriptions of the Mary Celeste incident elsewhere, telling such a hair-raising scene. But in fact, the testimony of the crew of the Goddess Grace did not mention the status of food or stoves, and this narrative actually comes from an 1883 report by the Los Angeles Times. There is no need to be so jealous. The tragedy of Mary Celeste is horrifying enough just because she turned into a ghost ship and plunged towards another merchant ship in the vast Atlantic Ocean. We will never know what happened to Captain Briggs, his wife, and young daughter, or what happened to the rest of the crew. Were they killed? Did you run away? Was it swept into the sea? The ocean of silence will not answer these questions, and Mary Celeste cannot answer them either.